Hello there. Welcome back to the booth here at Pro Tour Hour of Devastation. We are down the stretch. That's Luis Scott Vargas. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. We've got one more round here before we decide who is going to be undefeated overnight. We have two of our undefeated players here in the feature match area. We've got Seth Manfield playing against Sam Black. They're both playing the same deck, a little bit of a different build, but it's Ramanop Red versus Ramanop Red. Let's head down for round 8 here from Pro Tour Hour of Devastation. Hello, welcome back to coverage here at Pro Tour Hour of Devastation. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas. We're in Kyoto, Japan, and we've got two undefeated players, Luis, down in the feature match area. We've got Seth Manfield. He plays for Team Genesis, and he looks like he's a little antsy. We'll be playing in just a second, Seth. Don't worry. Just want to get you properly introduced. Two Pro Tour top 8s on his resume. Also, of course, world champion for a stretch there. On the other side of the table is Sam Black from Team Mutiny. And he's got two Pro Tour top 8s on his resume as well. Again, both players, Luis, on Ramanop Red, they didn't test with the same team, so I'm assuming these are slightly different lists.
They are. These decks have the same basic strategy and I think don't vary in a kind of fundamental way. But yeah, the card choices are different. Sam has a Cartouche of Zeal in his deck, for example, and the numbers on some of the removal spells and the threats are slightly different.
All right, Falconwrath Gorger is going to kick things off. There's also a Bomat Couriers here for Seth Manfield, plural. And yes, Sam Black does have a shock in his hand, but he's going to have to decide what he wants to hit pretty early here.
Well, if Sam didn't have the shock, he'd be in a lot of trouble. As is, yeah, he can handle the triple one-drop start reasonably well. Though Bomat Courier is pretty nice when you mulligan. Just makes the cost of discarding your hand that much less.
And, he has really just emptied his hand on the battlefield here, Seth. Down to just a couple of cards left in hand. Sam kind of playing the control route, at least thus far. Let's see if he can either turn the tables on Seth or just keep killing his threats.
Well, Sam has his own one-drops to play.
Okay. So Sam's gonna play a Bomat Courier of Zone. I wonder if it's going to get in the red zone. And he's also going to play a Village Messenger. No, he's going to leave it back to block.
Yeah, I like that. I think that Sam is happy. Both the creatures had haste. He chose not to attack with either of them. And I think that's good because he wants to put Seth in a position where he doesn't get to just freely attack with his own Bomat Couriers.
Nimble Blade, Earthshaker Kenra there.
Yeah,
Seth Manfield.
A very good draw there because that is going to open the door for Seth to get a good attack in and to get 2 cards under these Bomat Couriers.
That's right. Sam, is he going to want to trade off for one of them?
I would expect Sam to want to trade here, yes.
Okay.
It's close, but I think that one of the risks of not trading is Seth ends up with a Bomat Courier that has 3 cards under it, and then all of a sudden that becomes a powerful card drawing engine.
Okay, so that does in fact happen. Those cards are going to be exiled. Sam's going to take 3 damage on that turn and pass back another Bomat Courier there.
And the damage not as big of an issue at this point. Sam is still at a pretty high life total. Bomat Courier doesn't really pressure the opponent. So I think he's going to try to fight that by using Incendiary Flow right away.
Seth does get to respond, though. Get 2 cards after discarding his hand. In this case, just down to a mountain anyway. So that didn't turn out too poorly, although Sam has now completely turned the tables on Seth, attacking with 2 Bomat Couriers of his own.
This game's all about sending a message. That's all the players are doing. They're
no kidding.
Couriering threats back and forth.
Sam passes the turn back to Seth, who's got 4 lands now. What in the world? We already have a match update or a game update from one of our side tables. Yasuke Sasabe has won game 1 from Riku Kumagai. Even faster than this one somehow.
Mono Black Zombies against Ramanop Red.
Yeah, a real slugfest over there. And we've got red on red here. Is that a collective defiance?
Yeah, taking out a Bomat Courier and nugging Sam for 3 points of damage here.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Shock is nice. Shock does let Sam play multiple spells in the same turn, though.
Suppose he wants to get rid of the Earthshaker Kenra, though.
using Incendiary Flow on the Earthshaker Kenra is a nice way to start, and then you have Shock up for whatever Seth plays next, because most of the cards that Seth could play die to either one of those cards.
Right. So Sam's going to go ahead and cast that Incendiary Flow, taking out the Earthshaker Kenra. Meanwhile, his Bomat Courier is going to get in again and get its second card under it. He does have the red up as well. Quick start from Manfield, but he's really feeling the effects of that mulligan as Sam has out-attritioned him here, and basically both players have traded off boards until Sam's the only one left with that Bomat Courier, which looks pretty good here.
That Sunscorched Desert, a very nice draw for Sam, because now he can play On-Crop Crasher, emptying his hand further to make this Courier better while leaving mana up for the Courier or for Shock. So Sam in a commanding position now.
Wow, yeah, he's really running away with this thing. Smashing in for 4, knocking Seth down to 12, and putting that third card under the Bomat Courier and passing the turn back. What can Seth do? He's got Sam down to 10, but hey, it's still a long way to go with no board state to speak of here for Manfield. Well, he drew another Earthshaker Kenra. Is he still in a position to race? Probably. The On-Crop Crasher kind of makes it difficult to block anyway, doesn't it?
It does. Seth can get a little bit of a reprieve by forcing Sam to exert, but given Sam has a Shock, even though Seth is thinking about what he's going to do here, doesn't matter a ton. Sam is likely going to Shock the Earthshaker Kenra anyway.
Another update from our back tables. Christian Calcano's playing against John Finkel. They're both at 6-1, and Calcano is up a game over Finkel. Good stuff from our side tables there. And it looks like, yeah, Manfield has decided against attacking.
So Sam elected not to Shock the Earthshaker Kenra.
Yeah, he can see that Seth is 1 mana away. From being able to eternalize it.
So given not shocking, I think he's almost forced into exerting on Crop Crasher here.
Right, and he does, and there's card number 4 now under that Bomat Courier. So when Sam does want to use that Shock, boy, he's going to be able to reload his hand something fierce here.
There's a good chance that Sam might want to just point Shock at Seth and then sack Bomat Courier.
And then try to put some more threats out there.
Because at some point he's going to want to pick up more cards. Though, on the other hand, Sam does have a lot of haste creatures in his deck, so he doesn't necessarily need to sack the Courier this instant.
Sam's deciding if he wants to go from 10 to 8 here from the Kenra. He could use Shock. If he does and Seth has a land, he could just bring it back. Okay, now he's going to use the Shock.
And by shocking during combat, he does prevent the play you talked about, which is Seth being able to eternalize it, because now it's, of course, too late to eternalize and then attack.
Yeah, he could still do it. If he has the land, it's just so much worse.
If Seth has nothing better to do, I would expect him to spend 6 mana this way, just because it's so expensive otherwise. But
you've really mitigated a lot of that value, huh?
Sam's going to get to draw 5 cards off Courier next turn if you would like to. He could also draw 4 cards end of turn, though that doesn't save a ton of mana.
Sam's just looking at the board here. And yeah, that is exactly what's going to happen here is Manfield is just going to go ahead and eternalize that Earthshaker Kenra. So it's now a 4/4. And Sam's just going to cash in the Courier right now. He had 0 cards. Wow, 4 spells off the top for Sam Black.
Unfortunately, I think 2 are copies of Hazaret.
Oh, really?
Which doesn't really reward you for having multiple copies.
No, certainly not. In fact, it punishes you a bit. Land off the top of the deck, though, for Black. He also has a Cartouche in the mix there, as well as an Earthshaker Kenra of his own. So this could be a pretty potent turn here for Black, though. He is facing down a 4/4 Earthshaker Kenra.
It seems likely that Sam can finish the game next turn. It does not look like he's going to be able to on this turn. And he just needs to make sure not to die to whatever Seth ends up doing. because next turn he's going to get to attack and exert on-crop champion as well as use Cartouche of Zeal to prevent blocking.
Yeah.
So
Forget it.
he is lethal by a lot next turn, assuming he doesn't draw just another copy of Hazoret the Fervent.
Would we see Sam block here with the Earthshaker Kenra, just throw a chump block in if attacked? Like, does he need to be that conservative with his life total?
He doesn't want to die to like double Incendiary Flow.
Yeah.
But there's not a whole lot else that could kill him. Then again, the Earthshaker Kenra, it is actually critical to get that extra point of damage in.
Could eternalize it himself. He would have, again, 2 creatures that couldn't block plus the 7 power. And yeah, he is going to block. Interesting stuff. And there's a Carry Zev and another Falconwrath Gorger. Also, are we going to see Sam just play out the second copy of Hazoret here?
He doesn't need to. He's
yes.
He drew Earthshaker Kenra, so between
Yes.
that Cartouche and On-Crop Crasher, nothing's blocking, everything's attacking, and that is more than lethal.
Plenty enough for lethal for Sam Black, able to leverage that advantage that he gained by having removal spells early and using that Bomat Courier to reload his hand and finish the job. That's going to be game 1 between our 2 undefeated players going to Sam Black. We're going to have more magic for you. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after these messages.
Unleash your endgame next weekend. Bring your best standard deck to become the Hour of Devastation Game Day champion of your game store. Top finishers are awarded full art premium promo cards and an exclusive Game Day champion playmat for the winner. Find a game day near you at magic.wizards.com/gameday. Want to play in the next Pro Tour? Qualifiers are happening this weekend on Magic Online. For more information, visit mtgo.com.
And welcome back to the feature match area here in Kyoto. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas. And we got a little live look-in action for you here. John Finkel versus Christian Calcano. This is Ramanop Red versus Mono Black Zombies. And oh boy, Calcano up a game over the GOAT, but looks like he's off to a very good board state here as well.
This was a live look-in. This is a not going to be one for long.
Yeah, it's an undead look-in now. That's a lot of zombies for Christian Calcano. And how the heck is Finkel supposed to fight through this with Calcano at 16 life? It looks pretty unlikely. Let's see what Calcano can come up with here to try to finish off this game. It doesn't look too difficult from this point, though. He is facing down a 4/4, which is bigger than his creatures inside of that Diagraph Colossus.
He is, but trading off Diagraph Colossus and getting 7 points of damage through sounds pretty good. Alternately, John blocks either Crypt Breaker or a zombie token, and Calcano gets a bunch of damage through that way. That also seems pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, this looks like a really good spot for Calcano. He does want to make sure that there's no way he can take a bunch of damage and lose in like a 2-turn swing, but it seems so unlikely at 16.
Yeah, I have trouble imagining that the play is that different from just turning everything sideways. He can draw cards with Crypt Breaker. We've seen a lot of that, but
maybe too much of that.
Yeah, I do like attacking here. I think that keeping Crypt Breaker back is also reasonable because that replaces itself with or makes another zombie if Calcano's last card isn't anything relevant.
Sure.
So that's kind of a wash. But as long as you're sending in the creatures, I do think that's a good plan.
John's down to 6 now after taking a big hit blocking one of the 2/2 zombies.
And he can.
What does he find?
He's got Shock and Carry Zev, but
That's still not quite enough, is it?
Nope.
That'll probably turn into another zombie here. Calcano with 1 card left may just activate his Crypt Breaker to make a 2/2. Yeah, make a little room on the board there, Calc. He's doing the math to say, well, what would my board look like if, say, John played another creature or had another removal spell? Would I still be able to kill you? And the answer currently is yep. John has to go through the motions here down the stretch, although Calcano has just let that resolve. And that does it. Christian Calcano defeats John Finkel. 2 New Yorkers going at it. And Calcano is going to improve to 7-1 for Team MTG Bent card. What a great start to the tournament for Calcano. Remember, he's off of a top 8 at the Pro Tour as well here. So really great season for Calcano, regardless of what happens here. But this is a very strong day 1 start. He just needs to come back tomorrow and repeat the process. How hard could that be? You can see we've got a lot of shuffling happening here in our feature match area. Are we going to check in on Huey? Or? Okay, cool. We'll just take a little bit of a breather here while we work things up. Luis, you and I were taking a look at the feature match area decks that we have. You know, we've got 8 players playing, and 5 of them are playing Ramanop Red. And the worst record of anybody in the feature match area right now is 6-1 coming in. So we may have our deck to beat here. Also, all of the undefeated players are playing Ramanop Red as well. And also of note, 2 of the decks that we have here are Mono Black Zombies, which is another aggressive deck. And then the third one is a Pummeler deck, which is... calling it aggressive feels a little strange.
It's a combo deck.
It's more like combo-ish, right? But it still is looking to attack. So, interesting. We heard a lot about God Pharaoh's Gift coming in and haven't seen a whole lot of that around.
Not an island or plains in sight here.
I can tell you that Paulo Vitor Damita Rosa versus William Huey Jensen both coming in. Huey coming in at 6-1, where Paul is coming in at 7-0. They're going to a game 3. That's a match. We don't want to miss that one. And then Riku Kumagai is playing against Yusuke Sasabe, and they're also going to game 3, I believe. So a lot of action happening very quickly here in round 8. And I'm not surprised to see it given the matchups that we have down here. Not really sure what the judge is talking to Sam about here, but it looks like they're still just getting mulligans resolved. Kind of funny. Sam was actually asking the judge, at what point can I change my mind about my mulligan? He doesn't have any new information here, so it's like nothing's changed. But kind of funny. So, Seth has to choose first, and he's like, I'm going to mulligan. And then Sam said, okay, well, I'm not. But since he's been shuffling Seth Manfield's decks, he has reconsidered. He thought, maybe this isn't such a great keep. Am I allowed to actually go back on that yet? And apparently so. I mean, there's no game actions have happened in between, right?
No, though it looks like he is going to keep. Actually,
yeah.
Like Sam's keep.
Yeah.
So,
but he wanted to know, do I actually still have the option once I've started kind of shuffling my opponent's library and that kind of thing? Interesting question. You'll also see that from a lot of the highest level pros, not afraid to ask a question like that, even though they've been playing Magic for years and years in a tournament setting. Not afraid to say, hey, when is that line when I can actually ask? That once Seth opens up his next hand and starts looking, it's too late. But is me shuffling his library too late? And turns out it didn't look like it was. It's just he decided to keep. And now, looks like a tough decision here for Manfield, who's looking at his opening 6 here and really decided, he does not look happy about that, does he? Of course, you have to factor in the scry 1 that he'll get if he does keep this. Oh, tough decision. Wow. You can really see it on Seth's face here. And he's going to send it back.
Yeah, Seth was on a one-lander on the play there. And if you scry to the bottom and then miss, you're pretty bad shape.
Yeah. Especially when you know that you're facing another very assertive deck and one that can really put a lot of pressure on you if you do stumble a little bit. I am curious, Luis, do you think that Seth was thinking at all about Sam's question?
It doesn't change a ton, but it is information. I mean, Seth could put Sam on bluffing, that is
Sure.
within Sam's range,
Sure.
but
just to have a great hand and be like, actually, I might want to.
right. But I think
fun.
for the most part, I think that Seth probably just didn't change too much. Seth's hand was either keepable or not keepable. It wasn't borderline in the sense that it depended on Sam as much.
Okay, let's take a look at our 2 Japanese players here in the feature match area and see how they're coming along. This is another aggressive matchup here. This one's Zombies versus Ramanov Red. And it looks like the Dread Wanderer has no intention of blocking that Bomat Courier. He just got in. And what does Sasabe have? What are you going to do with that 2 mana? 0.
Wow.
Just does nothing. I'm surprised.
He had Fatal Push. He just drew a grass, so I don't know if he had access to that last turn, but
Okay.
it looks like he did. Yeah, and he just decided, no, not interested in killing Bomat Courier, at least not yet.
No, it doesn't, Riku's not going to be activating that Bomat Courier anytime soon, so he does have the time, though. Well, now he's decided to go ahead and kill it. He'd like to build out his board, and hey, there's a target, so Dark Salvation good enough. There's a Braid to kill the zombie.
Pretty good exchange for Yusuke there.
Yeah, Yusuke really got the best of that one for sure. Though Riku kind of had to do what he had to do. He's going to play a 3rd land and pass the turn back here to Yusuke. Are they ready? All right, let's head back up to Seth Manfield versus Sam Black here. It looks like the players are ready, and I do want to see how this second game unfolds here. And we know that it can happen very, very quickly with this type of matchup.
Well, in particular, Sam did keep a one-lander here, and he bricked on his first draw step, so Sam could be in trouble very quickly, even though Seth did mold a 5. This is how, Seth gets back into it. Like, Sam's going to have to discard now.
Is he going to discard? Yeah, he's just going to get rid of a Chandra or something like that. Boy, well, Sam wasn't bluffing, was he?
He was not. And if you're Seth, you're starting to get this faint wisp of hope, despite mulling to 5.
Yeah.
I actually think that Seth might consider not playing a creature into a somewhat obvious shock.
Oh, what a terrible draw for Black. He found a Glory Bringer. Oh, boy. Hey, that mulligan kind of helps out when you have Hazaret. I mean, I think he still has 3 cards in his hand, but he could change that equation quickly. And Sam's going to have to just get in with Bomat Courier, but he could be facing big hits from Hazaret the Fervent if Seth can just deploy some of the cards from his hand, although he just drew a Glory Bringer of his own, Luis, so he may have to discard that one to Hazaret if he wants to get out of his hand, though he is on 4 lands. Could just wait.
Oh, I think Sam is in a huge amount of trouble here because Seth, despite not being able to attack with Hazaret quite yet, just has a bunch of removal spells in a Glory Bringer and has 4 lands. He can actually cast his cards. Sam's already mulliganed to 5 himself, essentially by having to discard 2 cards to hand size.
Yeah, but he's just so far behind on the mana development side of things. It's going to be tough for him to come back. And this is Incendiary Flow, target you.
Just to get a card out of the hand.
Yeah. And he's just going to pass the turn back now. Incendiary Flow being a sorcery, he needed to do that in his turn. And what did Sam draw? Another miss?
He did.
Boy. Sam wants to go to combat. This is card number 2. Is there a number of cards where Sam would just cash in the courier and just release all these spells out of his hand?
Sam's getting close. I think at 3 cards, he might actually have to seriously consider it.
'Cause 2's not enough, right? That just doesn't give you the tools to win anyway. Sam wants to go to his discard step, but if Seth has any instants, this is his last chance to do that. Once you go to cleanup, you're already past the end step and you can't actually do anything anymore. It's just the act of discarding that card.
Yeah, now...
Oh, here's Glorybringer, and that also unlocks Hazaret? And that's going to do it. Wow. You know, we mentioned coming into this game here that sometimes these games go quickly, and oh boy, big sigh of relief. Yeah, let it all out, Seth. That's okay, buddy, because he stole that one.
Oh, yeah. This is 2 for 2 on seeing the player who mulliganed to 5 ending up winning, and, well, it all feels pretty good.
I mean, you wouldn't know.
Yeah, I've never won after mulliganing.
Right. All right, well, that means that we get to go back over and take a look at pretty epic game here. Look at this. William Huey Jensen versus Paulo Vitor Damodar Rosa heading into game 3, and we can tell them to go ahead and start playing. Might just keep us here for a while. This is the type of match that you don't want to miss much of either. Game trail there for Jensen to kick things off, but doesn't have a play yet. Well, that isn't going to stop Paulo. He's got plays for days. He's got the Gorger, the Messenger, the Courier. It's like the post office over there. Jensen, what do you have on turn 2? Well, he's got a Long Tusk Cub. Is that going to do much for him here? I suppose it does block pretty well.
If Paulo doesn't have a removal spell, this actually does stop everything but the Falconreth Gorger.
And Jensen's going to have to just take 2.
And that was the best case scenario for Jensen. Paulo does get to transform as Village Messenger, but that's just because he has nothing else to play.
Right. There's a steep cost to pay for sure to get an additional power on the battlefield by just doing nothing. What does Jensen have on 3? The Pummeler? Yeah, he does. This is game 3, so Paulo will have all of his possible answers for it. And Jensen's shields are currently down just 3 energy, but Paulo didn't do anything that turn. 2 Sunscorched Deserts also kind of maybe crimping his style a little bit with just 1 red mana source per turn here. Jensen is down to 12, though, as a result, and in fact, Paulo has another Sunscorched Desert in hand.
Sand Strangler is a nice piece of technology.
Wow. Did you see that reaction from Jensen? No. Well, Jensen said at the table, I hope it's not Hazaret, just anything but that. And then he played Sand Strangler. And we're into not like this mode for Jensen because this is going to be a tight game. How far ahead is Paulo here?
He's at this point significantly far ahead.
He's dominating.
Because even if Jensen trades 3 energy for a Beaumont Courier, because he can block with Pummeler and then make it a 2/2, he's still taking a lot of damage, and next turn doesn't have a great setup. So what Jensen needs to try to do is maybe steal a win here.
Combo off.
But it seems like he's fairly short of doing that.
Yeah, with only 3 energy, you make that 4, it's going to be really tough for him. He's got a Bristling Hydra, which is a fine addition to the board, but he's at 6 life. Ooh,
is that an on-crop crasher?
It was right off the top of the library there for Paulo.
That should end it here.
He can make it so the Pummeler can't block, which he's going to do.
And then has 8 points of damage coming in.
Yeah, he has plenty.
Regardless of how Jensen blocks.
Yep, and that's going to do it. A great draw from Paulo Vitor Damarosa earns him the victory. And Paulo is 8-0.
Awesome.
Wow, 2 Hall of Famers clashing there. Jensen is going to have to settle for a 6-2 day one start, a solid start for him. But Paulo was actually playing down that time and picked up the win. And he's undefeated. Now, there's going to be one other undefeated player, of course, at our main table. We're still figuring out if that's going to be a Sam Black or a Seth Manfield.
Well, given that Sam played a Ramanop Ruins on turn 1, that rules out the possibility
the only undefeated player,
of him having Mountain in his hand. And that's information that Seth, likes knowing.
No turn one play here for Manfield means that Sam Black's turn 1 Village Messenger is going to transform right away. Pretty ideal for him.
If Seth doesn't have a shock, then this could be a really hard game for him to win. Just being on the draw and not having a 1-drop.
Is he really going to take 4 here?
I think he probably still has one.
Okay, he has Magma Spray.
Even better.
Yeah. And he was rewarded for waiting there. He did get to nab an Earthshaker Kenra. Sam, I believe, is at 19 as well, as he did have to use a Ramanop Ruins to cast that Earthshaker Kenra, but we'll see. Oh, he's actually at 18. And there's Incendiary Flow, and all of a sudden, we're back to square one here, though Sam's the one who gets to be first to rebuild here. And it looks like he has a nice one. Did I see a Handwear?
Yeah, if Seth doesn't have another Incendiary Flow, Henry Garrison's going to do a pretty good job of dealing some damage, but it looks like...
Yeah, I thought he had a Henry Garrison in hand, but he didn't cast it, so maybe he's got other plans for that mana.
So it looks like Sam's going to leave up Double Abrade. Maybe he wants to get the Bomat Courier going before deploying a Garrison to the board.
Can Seth keep going card for card with Sam Black? Seth certainly has more cards in hand right now. He's got a full 6 in hand. Sam patiently looking onward as Seth decides what he wants to do. It looks like he's got 3 lands to work with as well.
And unfortunately for Sam, Seth's hand is removal, 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 and Hazoret. So that lines up very, very nicely against Sam's Double Abrade hand.
Okay. Now it is kind of interesting because there's 2 Seagate wreckage here for Seth Manfield. So now he's the one with just the 1 red mana source, probably limiting him to 1 spell a turn. No, there's another Earthshaker Kenra. Does Seth have himself another, at least Shock, but maybe even another Magma Spray?
Seth has Shock at the ready. He, at this point, looks, I think, very tempted to kill that Bomat Courier.
That's going to be the bigger problem.
But he takes less damage if he kills the Earthshaker Kenra.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Seth has Incendiary Flow in hand does make him want to kill Courier with the Shock and then Incendiary Flow on the Kenra to exile it and not have to deal with Eternalize. Sam drawing 2 copies of Ramanop Ruins and no Mountains is actually punishing him substantially here.
Yeah, it really is. Because once that table gets turned back on Sam Black, his life total is going to be significantly lower than it would have been. There's another mountain off the top, though, for Manfield. So does he just want to take this turn to fire off Incendiary Flow? He could use up all of his mana and play Hazoret, and that's what he's going to do. So he's got Hazoret the Fervent out. That is going to cost him at least another 2 damage, though, because Hazoret can't currently block. But it looks like Seth is looking to empty out his hand, like maybe if he draws a land next turn, he can go flow, flow, attack. Probably rooting for Sam to play out some incidental creature here, preferably one without haste. Like maybe the... Let's see what he plays, actually. Well, Kari Zev's a good example of that. Did he find a land? He did. He drew a mountain.
So if Seth wants, he can just dump his whole hand here.
Yeah, he could just knock out Sam Black's entire board state. Oh, he's even got another mountain in his hand. And he can just go zing, zing, and then hit you for 5. That seems like a pretty good turn here. Sam's already down to 15, and that's with Seth Manfield not doing much attacking at all. And bang, Hazret the Fervent gets in for 5, and all of a sudden there's a very potent clock on Sam Black, who once again draws a card he doesn't really want to see at that time, a Glorybringer. There's a Handwear Garrison, though, for Black. It doesn't feel like that's going to get the job done against Hazret, though. Seth does need to keep his hand empty. Thankfully for him, Hazret comes built in with that ability. And he's just going to throw a mountain at Sam for a couple of damage here. So Sam's going to fall down to 7, and here's Hazret. Wow, chump block here from Handwear Garrison. Things are not going well for Sam Black. How does he even come back at this point?
An unchecked Hazret like this is basically impossible to beat, and I don't think Sam is going to have the ability to.
Yeah, and he doesn't. That's going to do it. Seth Manfield is your second undefeated player on day 1. There's only 2 left. It's Seth Manfield and Paulo Vitor Damada Rosa undefeated after day 1. And we finally get a smile out of Seth, who was, he gets pretty intense when he's at the match, but he's pretty fun away from the table there, and you see a little smile from him there. And a combination of relief and happiness is usually what you'll get from Manfield, and that's what we got there. So fantastic stuff from him, improving to the full 8-0. And boy, you got to start getting your hopes up, for day 2 when you come in with an undefeated record, right?
It's actually kind of, well, it depends on player to player, but often when you start 8-0, you'll be like, I just don't want to screw this up. It's more than you have high hopes. It's more like I've got this gift and I want to make use of it.
What do they need to do on the next day to have a realistic shot at top 8?
Probably 4-3-1 to go 12-3-1. This is a slightly big pro tour. We have 460 something people here.
463, yeah.
So it's possible that a 5-3 is necessary, but I'd say 4-3-1 usually gives you in pretty good shape when you start 8-0.
Right, and that is well within reach. I mean, you put together a nice little draft deck, you get a 3-0 or a 2-1, and you work your way into standard that you kind of smashed with back on day 1, and that top 8 starts to really come into focus. And, there's a huge difference there, right? For the players that have one loss, like Sam Black now, for example, he's got a lot more work to do tomorrow, and that's a big difference when you're talking about day 2 at the Pro Tour, where the competition only gets harder. The good decks are staying. The people that took a shot with perhaps not the best standard deck have, now fallen to the wayside. And you start playing against some really stiff competition on day 2.
Yeah, it does get harder. And you get 3 more rounds of limited. Every player wants to draft, even the ones who actually have better shots at constructed. But getting to start out with limited tomorrow is going to be something these players are looking forward to.
And I'm looking forward to that too, because I don't know if you at home got a chance to see Sam Black's deck from earlier, but oh boy, does he go deep. And I'm sure we'll get a chance to see what he's up to tomorrow. That's going to do it for the booth here, though, for round 8. Let's send it to some messages and then the news desk.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the news desk as we head towards the end of day one here at Pro Tour Hour of Devastation. Rich, Maria, Paul here with you to bring you a ton of stuff. We've got end step just a few minutes away once that clock ticks down to 0 and we get those last results in. Well, goodness me, where do we start? I think we should probably start down on the floor actually, because Brian David Marshall is with someone who came into the weekend with plenty of races, plenty of irons in the fire, and has really delivered, especially once we got to the 75 card format. BDM, who are you with?
Thanks, Rich. I'm here with Sebastian Pozzo, and if he looks familiar to you, you may have seen him in some interviews we've done at the Pro Tour in the past, where he's served as a translator for Antonio Del Moral-Leon, who offered to translate for this interview for us, right?
And also my colleague from Argentina, do you remember Alejandro Cesa?
Yeah, this was.
Monored
Yeah,
player?
he must be very excited about your tournament this weekend.
Because what am I playing?
You are playing mono red. I mean, it's a 25% chance that that's what you're playing based on this field.
Yeah, I didn't look at the numbers, but it ended up being the most popular deck, right? Yeah, even more than I expected.
Now, you are 5-0 in standard in this tournament playing mono red, and that puts you at least in a tie for the world's invite based on standard performance over a full year of the Pro Tour. What have you been up to in standard this year?
I don't want to think much about it, but yeah, I've played aggro decks all the other 3 Pro Tours. I think there weren't particularly great choices, but apparently it's what I play the best, you know. So nothing much I can say. I just play. I don't want to speculate much in how are the others and everything. It's just great to do it.
Now, what would it mean for the South American Magic community for you to get a berth at Worlds as the standard master?
Now it would be great. There's also some other Latin players fighting for it. Well, the PT Dublin winner is already invited. He's from Brazil, Bertu. And yeah, no, it's huge. It's so think how many GPs do we have in Latin America? There's 3 and 4 if you count Mexico. So reaching that goal is really impressive, I think. But yeah, there's a long way to go anyway, so I don't want to think much about that.
Yeah, all right. Long way to go here for Sebastian Pozzo, but he's playing an aggro deck. He gets to play 5 more rounds of standard tomorrow, and that's where he feels most comfortable. So sending it back to you at the desk, Rich.
Great stuff. Good job by Sebastian Pozzo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is halfway to a perfect standard record. We'll talk more about Standard Master in a bit. But why don't we focus in for a moment on Player of the Year. So, Maria, we came in with Marcio Carvalho in prime position, but he still had to win a bunch of magic matches. How's he done?
All right, Marcio is safely through to day 2 at 5-3. 5-3 is Marcio Carvalho. There you see him 8th currently right now, 5-3. So we've got a lot of other players. Paulo Vitor Damadurosa definitely going to make a run for it. He's currently undefeated. He is a serious threat to Marcio's chances.
Right, and so the reason for that is that Marcio comes in on 78 points. That's actually 23 more than Paulo Vitor Damadurosa. But if Marcio were to do another 5-3 tomorrow, that would be 10-6. That would be enough for 6 pro points. That takes us to 84. Right now, Paulo is on 55. If you win the whole thing, that's 30 points, 55 plus 30, 85, 85, exactly 1 more than 84. And I think we can agree, Paul, that Paulo Vitor Damadurosa is someone who will think that winning this tournament from 8-0 overnight is well within his range.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at this point, Paul is basically due for another top 8 anyways, just given kind of his conversion rate.
Because it's been 2 since the last one or whatever it is.
It's been 6 months, so I think it's about time.
It's time.
Yeah, it's time. He's ready. So again, in prime position, one of the few people who just can just win it all.
Right. So also, though, Seth Manfield is right there. Now, he would like to make sure that Marcio doesn't go 7-1 tomorrow, because the difference between 10-6, 6 points, 12-4, 15 points. And at that point, Marcio would actually be eliminating a lot of players from contention. So a lot still to go, but Paulo Vitor Damadurosa currently the biggest threat for Player of the Year. Well, what about Rookie of the Year? For the Rookie of the Year standings, we came in with Ben Hull leading the way from 7 points clear of Makis Matsoukas. Why don't we take a look at the Rookie of the Year leaderboard? Maria, what's going on here?
So Ben Hull, you can see him there, was leading as we came into the tournament, currently at 5-3. Makis Matsoukas currently sitting at 5-2, and Jacob Negro at 6-2 as well.
Right, so the thing there is Negro was a fair way behind the leading two, which were Ben Hull and Matsoukas. So realistically, it is still that two-horse race. If Makis can win this round and get to 6-2, his big fish to fry is clearly Draft Master. And Paul, you see this so often in Tournament Magic because players are playing for different stakes along the way. Some are going, if I can get to 10-6, I get silver, so I get to come back once. So for them, 10 is the finish line.
Right.
But for other players here, it's just about, can I get Rookie of the Year? And you do see players, Makis Matsoukas doesn't really care about this last round. He cares about 3 rounds tomorrow morning.
Right, definitely. There's just so much on the stake, given that this is the last Pro Tour of the year. Everybody's just playing for so much. Everybody has all those benchmarks that they want to hit, and it'll be really interesting to see kind of how this race ends up shaking out.
Yeah, so we're still waiting for the Matsoukas result, but BDM is down on the floor once again, and he is talking with the man who, well, Paul says he's due another top 8. Whether he's due or not, he's heading for one. It's PVDDDDDR.
Thanks, Rich. I'm here with Paulo Vitor Damarosa, the Hall of Famer, and you're having a Hall of Fame day here, 8-0 to start your tournament.
Yeah, it's pretty good. First time I've ever been 8-0 at a PT.
That can't possibly be true. You don't get to get double-digit Pro Tour top 8s without going XO at a day one. Is that even possible?
It is. I mean, I have XO day one at Worlds when it was 6-0, but never at a PT.
So how are you feeling right now? Are you still being able to stay level, or do you start to see the finish line of, start to see what you need to do to make top 8?
I mean, you start to see it. I'm not going to lie. Like, you start thinking, well, then I need to win, 2 more matches, 3 more matches, and you start thinking about that, yeah.
Now, let me ask you something. We announced the Hall of Fame class today, Channel Fireball, 2 members, the other side of the coin, Channel Fireball Fire, Martin Yuza and Josh Utter-Layton, people you've been playing with for a long time, as a steward of the Hall of Fame, as someone with the secret key. How do you feel about those additions to the Hall?
Yeah, I think they both deserve to be there. I voted for them both, and we all knew Josh was going to make it. He was basically a lock, but it was a nice surprise to see that Martin made it too. So I'm happy for them both, and I think they both deserve it.
What's the? Is there a ceiling on how many Channel Fireball members from over the years can make the Hall of Fame?
No, I mean, if we can all be there, that would be great.
All right, Paulo, thanks so much. Great job today, and we will see you, I'm sure, in the draft area first thing tomorrow morning.
Yeah, thank you.
You can be certain of that. Paulo Vitor Damarosa will, of course, be at table 1. Pretty certain, so will we, when we kick off things again with Limited and the final 3 rounds of Draft Master. So why don't we take a look at the Draft Master scoreboard right now. Remember, this hasn't shifted since lunchtime today, but we had 3 of our 6 rounds, and this is how things look coming in. Maria, who have we got?
All right, Martin Yuza at 51 points, new Hall of Fame inductee there. Makis Matsoukas, who we might remember from the Rookie of the Year race, also leading the way at 51 points. Travis Wu, who was leading for us coming into the tournament, had a bit of a rough morning on 49 points. Owen Turtenwald still in the mix there at 48, as well as Timothy Wu and Christian Calcano.
Did you just say Christian Calcano?
I sure did.
That's Christian Calcano, who's on the floor with Brian David Marshall.
Wow, what a setup.
I'm here with Christian Calcano, coming off of the best finish of your Pro Tour career, and you're following it up with a 7-1 start here at Pro Tour Hour of Devastation. How are you feeling going into day 2?
Happy, I guess. Just, I'm just thrilled to have gotten as lucky as I have today, and I just hope that the luck continues tomorrow,
You had sort of an end boss for your last round in the feature match area. Tell us about your opponent there.
Yeah, I faced John Finkel in the last round, and it's funny you say that because I'd always picture, man, who would I want to face as, an end boss in the finals of a Pro Tour? And, obviously it's John. But, yeah, it was, I'm pretty happy that it was, A, a good matchup, and B, that I managed to get there. So, yeah, just hope to run it back tomorrow.
Now he's a. You got your tournament off to a little bit of a rough start. Actually, you lost your first round.
Yeah.
What happened there, and how did you rattle off 7 straight wins?
Yeah, I lost the first round of draft, and I drafted like a blue-black cycling deck that was pretty sweet. And my opponent just had like he was black-green with a bunch of trample creatures, like Ronus Monument, plus like Cartouche Strength. So pretty much like me like being a defensive deck, trying to like get to the later game, and my opponent just like being able to push through damage with like trample, etc. Like it was definitely a rough matchup, but luckily like I got the next 2 and then rattled off standard.
Now, you had one of the great Gale Strike plays of all time. It wasn't your Gale Strike. Tell people what happened.
Oh, yeah, so my opponent's on 12 life. I'm at 8 life. They have 3 flyers. One of them's untapped. It's the 2/3 Vigilance, I believe, Aven Wind Guide. And then I had 3 creatures. One of them's Horror of the Broken Lands, a Wasteland Scorpion, and then a Vile. The 0/4 gets bigger for
Vile Manifestation.
That one, exactly. So yeah, I attacked with all 3. I had 6 lands. My opponent thought for a second, decided to not block, so I went and cycled my Wasteland Scorpion, and my opponent in response decided to Gale Strike my Horror of the Broken Lands. Then in response, I cycled Vizier of the Tumbling Sands and untapped it for lethal, so it's pretty lucky.
I mean, I'm pretty jealous. That's pretty exciting. I love a blue-black cycling deck, and that's kind of a dream scenario.
Yeah.
Christian Calcano, 7-1, heading into day 2, looking to follow up on his top 8 from the last Pro Tour with another strong finish here to end the season at Pro Tour Hour of Devastation.
Thanks, BDM. It was so cool to see Christian Calcano make that top 8 in the last Pro Tour. A really emotional moment for him. So great to see him doing so well again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Paul, I wanted to talk a little bit about draft because you were in the booth all for the morning for the draft. What did you see? What's the state of draft?
I think draft is in an excellent spot right now. I think a lot of people were a little bit concerned about kind of the speed of Triple M and Kit draft. Just, it just wanted you to be just all out aggression. You had the cheap cartouches and a bunch of great exert creatures. But now, format slowed down a bit. You can play blue. It's a playable color. You don't need to shy away from that. There's a lot of different archetypes. As we saw, Sam Black, I like to call this the masterpiece.
Oh, it
my
was
goodness.
Beautiful.
He had this crazy triple manalith 4/5 color deck, and he really needed a sweeper. In the last pack, guess what he opened? A Wrath of God Invocation. He's like, I was drafting to my outs, which is opening up a sweeper. How about the best one, right? So we had Sam Black have success with this just awesome 4-color strategy, but at the same time, we also saw Mike Sigrist have success with red-green beatdowns. So there's a lot of different things you can do in this format, and I think that's what really makes for a good draft format.
And we saw a player drafting green at our feature match table and somebody else drafting green, but both of them were drafting completely different green-based decks. One of them was a ramp-style deck, and one of them was a red-green kind of beat-down aggro deck, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and that's the thing about this format. Again, when you want to draft like the 4 or 5 color green decks, you don't really care too much about cards like Ronus the Stalwart, right? That's the type of card that's going to go into a deck that's going to look to attack, right? If you're looking to play a defensive deck, a card like Feral Prowler, which an aggressive deck never wants, that's the card that you want. So you're not really fighting over these cards a lot. So you can actually have just like 2 green drafters in a row and have them all have decent decks. In the first draft that we covered, we actually, I believe, had 3 drafters in a row all draft green, and they all did well. And they all actually had pretty decent decks, which is really surprising.
Yeah, it's going to be great stuff as we head back into draft in the morning. But Standard Master, the results are coming in for that. And Maria, we have some really big news in the race for Standard Master.
All right, Sean McLaren wins his final round to put him on 81 points in the race for Standard Master, tied with Sebastian Pazzo, both of them on 81. Sebastian, we heard from just a little bit ago, perfect record in Standard, 5-0. Big news here as well, Steve Haddo is out. He has not made day 2. It is a big deal.
He lost that last round. So he is on 75 points, but will not get a chance to add tomorrow. At 3-5, he is done. Kelvin Chu also lost this last round, so he is out at 3-5. So what that means is that McLaren and Pozzo on 81 points have a 5-point lead in the race for Worlds, remember, in Standard Master from Li Shi Chan. And then you've got players on 75 and 72 going down. But Paul, if we could give you at the start of a season, we say you come in to the last day of the season with 5 rounds with a deck you've already had success with, and it's you or just one other player who's going to get a seat at the World Championship. You would bite my hand off, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would be completely thrilled. You know, I haven't been in this situation before, so I really wouldn't know. But if I were to imagine myself, yes, that would be amazing.
Yeah, 5 points clear is 2 full rounds,
Right.
essentially. They can go 0-2 before Li Shichan, if he wins his first 2 tomorrow, would go above one or other of them. So it's looking like McLaren or Pozzo are going to potentially be your standard master and get that coveted seat at Worlds. Well, what about, talking of Worlds, the at-large slots? Let's show you the scoreboard for the at-large players who, coming into the event, were in position to benefit from that. So here's the Worlds at large, and Paul, you can certainly talk about a bunch of these great players.
Yeah, just so many fantastic players. Seth Manfield, you know, last year had one of the best seasons of all time, and it looked like he was going to run away with it, and then Owen Turnwald managed to catch him. But 8-0, prime position to top 8, and if he puts up a good finish, he's going to get that world slot. Also, we have, of course, William Jensen, Li Shitian, up-and-comer Donald Smith.
Yeah, now he was on the outside looking in. He was literally the first of the other 13 were in coming in. He was the first player on the outside looking in, 7-1. He's going to leapfrog a bunch. A huge result for Eric Froelich as well, because he was at 3-4, same position as Steve Hatto, but Froelich won his last round. He comes back at 4-4, which means that tomorrow he can put together a 5-3 for 4 points, a 6-2 would get him to 10-6 for 6 points. That could be critical for his chance of being one of the world's at-large slots. But the good news is that all the results are in here on day one, and that means it must be time for end step.